Emily gripped the steering wheel as the old van wound its way up the narrow, tree-lined path. Next to her, Mark checked the map one last time, glancing nervously at the dense forest surrounding them. In the back, Sarah leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the looming silhouette of Ravenswood Castle. The castle's ancient towers pierced the stormy sky, and its crumbling stone walls were shrouded in a thick veil of ivy. The air grew colder as they approached, and a sense of dread settled over them. With a final, bone-chilling creak, the van stopped in front of the castle's rusted iron gates. The three friends exchanged uneasy glances before stepping out into the overgrown courtyard, where the wind whispered through the trees like ghostly voices. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door, and they stepped into the grand hall of Ravenswood Castle. The air was musty, and the scent of decay hung thick. Dusty chandeliers, their crystals grimy and dull, dangled precariously from the high ceiling. Faded, tattered tapestries depicting scenes of long-forgotten battles adorned the walls, and a massive, cracked marble staircase spiraled upward into darkness. Their footsteps echoed ominously as they walked across the cold stone floor, each step sending a shiver down their spines. The hall was a testament to the castle's former glory, now reduced to a shadow of its past splendor. They wandered down a dimly lit corridor until they found the library, the door hanging slightly ajar. Inside, shelves upon shelves of ancient, leather-bound books lined the walls. The air was heavy with the scent of old paper and ink, mingled with a hint of mildew. A large, ornate desk sat in the center, covered in cobwebs and dust. Emily approached the desk and noticed a book lying open, its pages yellowed and brittle. As she reached out to touch it, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut behind them, causing the candles to flicker wildly and sending chills down their spines. Mark, always curious, fiddled with a dusty bookshelf and accidentally triggered a hidden mechanism. With a soft click, the bookshelf slid aside to reveal a narrow, dark passageway. The air within was colder, and the walls were lined with strange, archaic symbols. They exchanged hesitant glances, their curiosity piqued despite the fear gnawing at them. Armed with a single flashlight, they ventured into the passage, the walls seeming to close in on them as they descended deeper into the bowels of the castle. The passage led them to an underground crypt, the final resting place of the castle's former inhabitants. The room was filled with stone coffins, each bearing the name and dates of the deceased. The air was damp and cold, and the sound of dripping water echoed around them. As they moved deeper into the crypt, they noticed one coffin had been disturbed, its lid askew. Suddenly, a cold hand grabbed Sarah's ankle, and she screamed, her voice reverberating through the crypt. Panicking, they fled the crypt and found themselves in a long, narrow hallway lined with portraits of the castle's former residents. The eyes in the portraits seemed to follow them as they ran, and whispers filled the air. Mark felt a cold breath on his neck and turned to see a ghostly figure in tattered clothing standing behind him. The figure's hollow eyes stared into his soul, and he felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Cornered in the hall, they faced the ghostly figure, who began to speak in a low, raspy voice. It revealed the dark history of Ravenswood Castle, speaking of betrayal, murder, and a curse that bound the spirits to the castle. Desperate to break the curse, the ghost pleaded for their help, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily, Mark, and Sarah, though terrified, agreed to help the restless spirit find peace. Guided by the ghost, they made their way to the castle's chapel, where the ritual to break the curse had to be performed. The chapel was in ruins, with broken pews and shattered stained glass windows. They set up the ritual items as instructed: a circle of salt, candles, and an old, sacred book. As they began the incantation, the air grew colder, and shadows danced around them. The ground shook, and ghostly wails filled the chapel. With a final, powerful incantation, the ground stopped shaking, and a blinding light filled the chapel. When it faded, the ghostly figures were gone, and an eerie silence settled over the room. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. The curse was broken. Exhausted but relieved, Emily, Mark, and Sarah exited the chapel, emerging into the dawn light. The first rays of sunlight touched the castle, making it seem almost peaceful. They knew they had freed the trapped souls and could finally leave Ravenswood Castle behind.